All right, Vince, we're live.
Oh, hey, how's it going? We're actually talking about Alamo City Game Con. Up next on Geek Out SA.
Do not attempt to adjust your YouTube video. We control the stream.
And welcome back to Geek Out SA. It's Friday and we're having fun. And we have a guest today. Welcome to the show, Andrew. We're gonna have to look over all the cameras and stuff now.
Glad to be here. I'm looking forward.
It's been a while. I feel like you've been on the show before, but you haven't.
You're right.
This is the first time you've been on the show, and it feels like he's been on before because we've talked to you so much.
Yeah, I thought Andrew had been on the show before, so I didn't realize that Andrew had not been on the show before. So Andrew's like, here I am. Well, we talked to Andrew, so.
I'm a veteran. I just sent my shadow ahead or something.
Yeah. And you see me, I'm back over here. So unfortunately, Aaron is having not the luck of the Irish. He's having the opposite of whatever the luck of the Irish is. Yeah. So he has had his car catalytic converter stolen.
He tried to steal a pot of gold or something.
And then it was at the shop, and personal things got stolen out of the car. And then he got Montezuma's revenge, and so he's just if Aaron's out there watching while he's laying in bed sick, hi Aaron, we miss you, and we hope you feel better soon. Yeah. But tonight, Vince is going to talk to Andrew, and I'm going to pretend like I know how to press all these buttons.
Sounds good.
So, Andrew, you contacted me like, what, a year and a half ago?
Yes.
A year and a half ago, somebody mentioned to you that I had something to do with, like, gaming conventions back in the day. And actually, Colleen and I did. We ran 2 conventions in the past, and then we stopped. But then, right before COVID started. It was right during COVID.
It was right before.
It's right before COVID.
Yeah, we got out before COVID took us down. So, so Andrew, as people who are like, I think you're kind of a little wacky for wanting to do a gaming convention because of all the things that Vincent and I had to go through. What kind of led you to want to do this?
Yeah. You're not the first person to say it's kind of wacky that I want to do this. But basically what led me to it is really simple. I love going to game cons. I was in a cycle where I would go to one of them every year and usually at least one more. And it was something I always looked forward to. And especially if they're local, I enjoyed being able to do that. I came to San Antonio and I was not aware of any that were going, and at that time I think there weren't, but I've learned about some other things that are there, and FlingCon has started, which is cool. Mm-hmm. And so, I kind of looked around and I said, well, if there isn't anything, maybe we can just do this. And I was looking at kind of career stuff anyway, and I kind of had this crazy thing of just like, what if I just do the things I love doing and see if I can make a go of this? So it was all that sort of stuff. But really, it's basically, I love going to them, and I wanted to have a really good one here.
Nice. So
I got into it for a very different reason to start out with.
Right.
I'm curious.
Right. So I think you need to tell on yourself, and I think you need to tell Andrew what that reason was, because I don't think anybody's heard this.
Okay. So the real reason that I started it, but I kind of started going and doing the convention.
Kind of started taking over one is what he means.
Kind of started taking over one is because I wanted a good place to run my games. So yeah. I'm wearing my Pincha Games stuff, and we would run Pincha Games every time we would go to conventions, and I saw the potential there, and I wanted it to be more. So I tried to make it more.
Yeah, because back in the day, when we started making games, we were in our 20s, and Vincent married me, and I already had 3 kids when he married me. So we didn't have the kind of money to go to Gen Con, because people don't realize how expensive it is to really go to Gen Con and enjoy Gen Con. And there wasn't a lot still going on. Like even Dragon Con was pretty far away to have to go over there. But Chimera Con was happening here in San Antonio. And it was, bless their hearts, it was these gamers, and they put it together, and they loved gaming, but they didn't really understand.
And I had never been to any convention before. And in fact, our partner at the time, with Richard Sanchez, he actually told me about ChimeraCon. He's like, yeah, you can do it and run games, and you can get in free. He got us in at the last day. Like, people already submitted their stuff, but somehow he talked them into getting us to run our games there. And we got in the schedule and everything. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed that, and then once I got into it, I enjoyed it for a little bit, and then it became work, a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
Even when you have people, it's a lot of work, and especially when you're trying to make something more than it was, to get it to the next level. And that's what I was always trying to do. Like, every year, it's hard. It's very hard. And
so, Andrew, what do you think for you, what has been the hardest thing so far in trying to run a convention?
Well, I think the hardest thing may be just that early on we chose the wrong date. I mean, we originally intended to go on Labor Day weekend, and I had a team up and going and lots of momentum built for it. And I had seen that there was an anime convention that weekend, and I thought, oh, there's probably some crossover. The first person who told me, you better be careful of this, was Vince. And I was like, ooh, well, we've committed and we've done this. And I was like, but I mean, there's only going to be some gamers there, right? And then the more we went with it, the more we realized how many people that was their commitment for that weekend, people who otherwise would have been supporting and tying in with us. Mm-hmm. And so I think the delay has been difficult. And in particular, the delay, we had a team that was, all gung-ho, going hard. And then we had this long delay. And I think for all of us, that was, a little change of pace. Mm-hmm. And then I took a full-time job in the middle of that. I was doing private tutoring when we first started. And so I had all this energy and I was go, go, go. And now I don't have quite the time and energy. And so it is more challenging. It's just plain more challenging. And it is a ton of work, no matter what. And I'm thankful we did put in all the work we did when I did have time. Because it's not like all that just went away. But it wasn't quite ready to run either. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I remember that day. I was like, oh, that's a bad weekend, because I had asked some people, because I know a lot of people in the industry, just the convention industry, be it like anime or comic or whatever. I asked, so what's going on that weekend? Do we have anything going on that weekend? And they were like, well, there's this anime convention, there's this other thing happening. And I was like, oh.
Okay, but I'll tell you a little story, Andrew, so you don't have to feel bad. So we would always, like, right after the con ended, you start planning for the next year, because you need that whole year to plan, right? Mm-hmm. So we're looking at the calendar, and we had wanted to kind of move the convention because things were starting to pop. Like, when we first started doing ChimeraCon, there wasn't that much stuff. And then we transferred over to Game Expo, and cons were really a big thing for a while. I'm sure you remember that. Before COVID, there was one like every weekend, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at dates, and I'm like, well, what about these? There's like nothing happening on these dates. And we're all like, yes, sounds good. Let's do it. So we prepay for some of the hotel, super expensive. Like, people don't know how many thousands of dollars it is to rent a hotel, right? It was Easter weekend.
Oops. Oops.
So don't feel bad.
Well, with our new spring time schedule, Easter will be one of the things we will need to make sure we're avoiding on an annual basis.
It actually wasn't that bad.
Really?
It actually wasn't too
really
bad.
Good.
It was pretty good. People still wanted to come and bring their kids and stuff. And the thing we did was we got like dice and little things that we could, and we hid them in eggs around the con.
Yeah.
And so that was just a thing that we could do that people liked, and there was candy and stuff. So, you just make it work, right? You just kind of to make it work.
I'd never do it again, but
No.
It's too much work because people do want to be with their family, but sometimes their whole family goes to the con. Like we had a group of volunteers, the whole family would take their vacation and plan it around Game Expo or ChimeraCon.
I love them. The Ellises, they are
Yeah.
fantastic. They're from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they just would come every year.
See, that's the kind of thing that I used to do. I mean, every Memorial Day weekend, I was going to be at a game convention. And most of the time on Labor Day or President's Day weekend, I was going to be at another game con. And it becomes this kind of tradition, and you start to see people, you know, there are people that I only know from game conventions, and they're great friends. One of my best friends in the whole world, I met him the first game con I ever went to. And that was a hilarious experience, because I think my experience for that is what I'm hearing. At Alamo City, we're going to have a lot of people coming, and it's the first time they've ever gone to a game con. And what I'm hearing from a lot of people is, so people do that. They set aside like a whole weekend and just play games. I'm like, oh yeah. And that was exactly my response. I went into this game store, and I would always go buy Dragon magazine, or a Dungeon magazine rather. And I see this thing for a game convention. I was like, really? People do that? They spend a whole weekend just playing games. That would be awesome. So I was like, I'm going to go. I didn't know a single person. I just show up, and I was like, well, I'll run a D&D game. That'll be good. And I posted it on a little board, you know. And I met this guy the first game I ever played, and he was really cool. And so he and his wife joined the game that I posted, and we had a blast. And he's helping me run this con, you know, 30 years later.
Nice.
And yeah, and you know, it's like when I'm visiting, you know, I've got a place to stay, I've got a car to borrow. It's that kind of thing.
Nice.
So, yeah, and that all started at the first game con I ever went to. That was just fun. And now I realize individual results may vary, but even over the years, there are just a lot of people that I've met at game cons. I know the kinds of games they'll run, and I'll come in and be like, oh, you know, you're going to be playing this. Yeah, I'd love to do that. Let's do that. You know. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
So I'm hoping to build that kind of experience for a lot of people.
So what are some of the game cons that you've been to?
I lived in the Bay Area for most of the time that I'm talking about. So KublaCon was the one that ran on Memorial Day weekend. The first time it started, I had gone to a bunch of game cons when that one began. First time it started, it was just a guy that I knew who was launching it, and there were 200-ish, 250 people at it, and it was nice. It was a good time. There were other cons already established that had, you know, several hundred people. KublaCon grew over the years. It's now like 3,500 people.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah, it's they have the airport, San Francisco Airport Hyatt, and every square foot in the hotel is devoted to the con, and they've overgrown that to where they're now including stuff from the hotel next door. And then there was another one on Labor Day. That was actually the first one I ever went to. That one's who is running what on that weekend changed a lot over time. And then there's the oldest, DundraCon, and that one's like from the early days of Dungeons and Dragons, and it's on President's Day weekend, and it's still going. So it's got to be one of the longest running game cons there is. And so I would usually go to one or the other of those. And then LA had kind of the same sort of setup, and so I would sometimes just pop down there because it would be fun. And then I had friends who wanted to launch something in Washington. I went to that. And then we moved back. I'm from Austin originally. I moved back to Austin, and there were no game cons in Austin. I was thinking I wanted to launch one. And I got a bunch of my family and friends together for a weekend of gaming at this property we have in Bastrop. And I was going to launch this big surprise. You're going to be the core of a game convention that we're going to start next year. That was my big dream. So I go into my favorite little game store to buy some dice for this role-playing game that I'd invented. And I see on the table an advertisement for ChupaCabraCon. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And I asked the guy, and he goes, I have no idea. They just put these here. And I was like, really? And then he goes, yeah, you'd have to ask the store owner. So I asked the store owner. He goes, oh, yeah. Well, it's just new. It's just launching. I'm like, but this is the weekend that I'm doing my little proto game con. Like they're taking this idea and they've launched. And so that kind of put that idea on hold. And I was glad ChupaCabraCon was there. It turns out that the folks who started that are friends with the guy who started KublaCon. I'd gone to several Chupacabra cons before I knew that. I was sitting at a game table one time, and I look up and I see this guy, Japji Khalsa, and I'm like, what the heck are you doing here? He goes, oh, the founders of this are all my friends. You're kidding me. I had no clue. So I knew the con real well. I knew him really well. I had no idea that he knew them. And it turns out they knew each other not from gaming, but because they played in a band together.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. I know. Life's cool, isn't it? It's fun.
Thomas Watt says, hello there, Manny.
Hey, Thomas.
Manny
I know
fell
him.
down.
Poor
Okay,
Manny.
he's going to lie
done.
down. He's tired.
He's done.
Well, it's nice to hear from you, Thomas.
So what kind of gaming is what is your go-to? Because I feel like gamers, there are some of us that like a lot of the different genres, but like, what is your go-to games? Is it board games, minis, RPGs? What do you got?
Okay, so at Alamo City, the goal has been to put out 4 different types of games. Sadly and weirdly, we've done very badly on the card side, which in San Antonio is nuts because everybody's always at stores playing Magic. Right?
No, cards is very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard
It's
to
always
get.
been hard.
All right, so there's cards, there's miniatures, there's board games, there's role-playing games. Well, what got me to the Game Con in the first place was role-playing games. I love role-playing games. What I found over the years, I starting to go to these Game Cons, all of a sudden I was like, oh, there are actually some cool board games. Like you don't have to play Risk and Monopoly and Life or Clue like I grew up on. There's actually some cool games. And so I got caught up on that. And what I found over time is it's hard to get a good group of folks together to do an RPG. It's easy to get people together to play board games. And so I play way more board games than I do role-playing games. I love role-playing games. That's my favorite thing, but it's hard to get the right group of people.
right group.
And
The
to get
right group
anything
of
going.
people.
The right group of
Right.
people, because I know, well, especially with me, I have a hard time playing well with others and playing the way
Is this confessional, Vince?
playing the way the group wants me to play. Specific groups, because they're very set in their ways, and they'll play a little. Okay, let's heal everybody right now. I only lost like 5 points of health. I'm good. Let's go. Let's just keep playing.
So while I was in California, my friend Kevin and I, we were co-DMs of a group, and we got together every Wednesday night for years. And then as people got older, it turned into every other Wednesday night for years. And it turned into Wednesday nights when we could manage it, for when we could do it,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the story. And all during that time, I would come back to Austin where my family lives, and I ran this constant game with my sisters, my nieces and nephews, later on my stepsons, so I've always been doing that, and it's been a ton of fun. I do end up being the DM a lot, and so I get to have a little more say in how the games run, to some extent.
What RPG do you like to play?
Well, I like tons of them. What I usually run, I call it Castles and Crusades, but even that, Castles and Crusades is it's like an old school kind of feel, but it's a D20 game, and it's rules light, but I run it extremely rules light. I've been running that one for 12 years now, probably, and I've never once owned the DM guide.
Oh, nice.
So I run it basically like, I get the gist of it, and I'm like, okay, well, here's what we're doing. Yeah, just roll that. Okay, good, we're good. Because I'm not really into rules. I'm much more into play. So.
Yeah, so that's how Vincent and I are. So we designed an RPG. It's a 3D6 roll under system, but it's more of a storytelling type of game and less of a, like, you've got to roll the dice. If people want to do something and you think it's reasonable, like, do it, or maybe put an obstacle in their way or whatever. So I do a gaming club at school, and so it's hilarious. So my kids play D&D, but again, they don't really read the rules very much. They have the guides and stuff, and I even had like a starter set that some of them read, but it's a lot of reading for kids, so they play Dungeons and Dragons rules light. And it's
We
a lot.
usually have the one person that reads all the rules. And
Used to be that way, but like with my
that
kids,
doesn't happen anymore.
no, with my kids, we don't have, because it used to be that way. Like when I used to play D&D, like
Oh yeah.
I
There was
mean,
always somebody
there
who
was
knew all the
always
rules
somebody
and would
who knew-
stop you and say, "Wait, I think I'm allowed to do this because." Okay.
Okay.
Cowabummer says interesting.
Interesting. Have you ever played GURPS?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
like
I've
GURPS
enjoyed
a lot
it.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really like this game, The Strange. I was just talking to a game store owner here because he had Numenera up as one of the things that they play, and I was like, they're related, and I was like, I'll come in and run a game, for that because well, that's getting off on a real tangent. I'm great at tangents. It's dangerous.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so anyway, Tad Williams, sci-fi writer, wrote this series Otherland, and I've always thought, man, somebody needs to make that into an RPG. And I told him I would do that for him, and he told me that it was licensed, and I probably couldn't do that for him. But The Strange has kind of that same sense where there's these different worlds, and you can kind of bounce around in different ones. I'm like, this would be really fun. But right now, I just own the book, and I have played once, and it was at a Game Con. So,
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah. We've had some really good RPG sessions at gaming cons, at our gaming con.
Yeah.
We've been really fortunate to have, when we bring in guests, we bring in these writers and things. And so we're like, hey, we're taking you out to dinner or whatever later on. You want to run a session? And most of the time they've written it. They're like, yeah, I'll run a session, And so they would run it for us and some of our people or whatever. And we would
From,
get
like Green Ronin and yeah.
No, and this won't probably happen at Alamo City, so I'm not making any promise. But isn't that a cool thing? I was at KublaCon, and I was on my way to a game, and there were these folks playing a Goodman Games game, and they were, there was this guy at the table explaining the zero level funnel thing, and I was like, see, I love this. I mean, it's like not exactly my style, but I love Goodman Game stuff. And so they started asking me all these questions about, so I started giving critiques of the whole company. And then this guy, he kind of nudges me and he goes, "That's Joseph Goodman you're talking to, by the way." And I was like, cool. Okay. So
nice.
I started going back. Yeah, everything I said was cool. All right, good. But I mean, he's just sitting at an open gaming table with a bunch of people who want to play a game. And I was like, that is so cool. And he goes, well, you seem to really like this. You want to play? And I'm like, yes. He goes, so what's wrong? I'm on the schedule to run something and I got to go there. I'm so sorry. I'm so bummed.
Joe is on too. Joe says FleeCon will be there too.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So excited. So awesome.
Yeah.
And it's really nice that our community really supports each other.
Joe's a great guy,
Yeah.
and we were both trying to launch things at the same time, and they're not 100% the same, though they may become more and more the same, but I think it's always been really easy to support him, and I feel very much supported by him as well. Yeah, I mean, you've been to FleeCon, that's fun. I mean,
it's a lot of fun.
It's great, and he is Mr. Hospitality. That's kind of my whole sense with him, so, yeah.
Are you planning on having any kind of guests or anything like that for
No.
your con? No.
No, not at this time.
Okay.
But, if Steve Jackson decides to show up and run a game, that would be awesome and people would love it,
He doesn't do that, trust me.
No, I actually have a friend who that
He
was his
played
favorite
our
experience.
game once. He did play our kids' game
I'm
once.
using that only as an example.
He did. So Steve is a little hard to get him to come out and go to cons. He likes to get paid for his time, and I don't blame him, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's a little hard to get him to come out, but we've been to some cons in Texas where he was at, and he actually did play a game that I invented that I thought was going to go somewhere and never ended up going anywhere. But he did, and he liked it, and said that he wanted to kind of go in that direction as well. And I think that's after that was when he did Simon's Cat and some of the other, stuff like that. So that was nice to do. We also had one con that we went to in Texas where the game designer was the guest, but he couldn't make it. And so he was the guest, he telecommuted basically. And so we got to go have sessions with him and talk to him about game development and stuff like that. And he actually hired me after one of the sessions, Lester Smith, to write for D6 by D6 and write one of the
Oh, cool.
write one of the adventures for his RPG. So that was really great to do as well. So we love games. I love
Likewise.
RPGs. So if
It's
you
been-
need some players,
It's been more difficult for us after COVID
Yeah.
playing games.
Yeah.
Even making games has been difficult for us too.
we've
We've been on hiatus for
had a hard time. We had some hard life knocks that kind of hit us pretty hard. So we're still trying to kind of come out of that
Yeah.
a little bit. So yeah.
Well, it's funny. I have things I'll try to go back to that we've already talked about. But it's funny. You mentioned that you do a game club at your school, huh? Uh-huh. So do I. So our school has these after school clubs, but they're really limited. It's like an hour. And so there's no way I was going to try to do any role-playing game, but even board games in an hour, you're really limited. But I've planned it well. It's gone really well. We've had 2 sessions. We go every Monday after school. And it was really funny because I gave the kids a survey at the start, and I asked everybody what their favorite game was. You know, it was number 1 on every single list? D&D.
D&D.
And I
Yeah.
was like, wow.
Because of
Okay.
Stranger Things. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's it.
Stranger Things really brought D&D back to the forefront to where the kids knew what it was. They didn't know about it before it's Stranger Things. And then it became this really big thing. And then they started to see
even
celebrities
before
who were
that-
playing.
Yeah, even before that, they did it on what's that nerd show?
Oh,
Oh, the nerd show where all the actors said they don't even like nerds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
not Third
Big
Rock.
Bang Theory.
Big Bang Theory.
That's the one.
Yes, Big Bang Theory.
That's the one.
They started playing D&D on Big Bang
Yeah,
Theory.
but the middle schoolers don't know Big Bang
Yeah.
Theory,
Right.
but they do know Stranger Things. They do know Stranger Things.
So, so I'm also doing kids camps during the summer. St. Mary's Hall has this great summer program, and last year I did a whole bunch of board game camps and a bunch of role-playing game camps. This summer I'm much more limited in my time, but I'm doing a few of those, and that has been a blast. And the role-playing game camps sell out like completely, and the kids have had so much fun with that. And we're talking about like getting a group together, so that's a kind of a weird setting, and I could have anywhere from I said I think from 9 to 18, and then the director calls me and says, well, I've got this, I can't remember if she was 7 or 8 years old, who got booted, her camp was canceled, and she looked through and this is the one she wants to do. Are you open to having somebody younger? And I was like, I mean, if she's got the focus for it and she's got to have some motivation, I go, if you want to let her try one day. And so she tries it out, and she comes back and she's like, that's the best camp I've ever gone to. And she was totally into it.
Nice.
I mean, she was hilarious. She was like, you have all these, by far the youngest, and she was small for her age too. So she was like the smallest, youngest kid at the table, and she would just start directing the game. But it was fun. She had a great sense for.
Well, and that's the
awesome.
thing I always have to worry about every year is I've got to get my 8th grade DMs who are good at it to train the youngers so that my thing can, because that's my only rule is I don't play with the kids. Especially because I teach a lot of the GT kids, the gifted and talented, and they tend to gravitate towards the grown-ups and they don't have those skills to be with other kids. So that's my only rule when they come in. I'm like, look, I would love to play, but I want y'all to play amongst each other and learn how to like work things out together and do things like that. So they have to do that. And then the older DMs have to teach the younger ones. And so one of mine has been she has been looking forward to, my 8th grader this year, she's been looking forward to it since she was in the 6th grade. And she practiced over the summer and everything. Like she's really into it.
So when I need an assistant, because I will, at the role-playing game camps, I'll run a game. But if I have 12 kids signed up, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So my daughter came in and led a table last summer, and I had a friend who was, assisting me with most of those camps, but she wasn't able to make one of them. That's the one that Claire showed up for. But maybe you'll be a good source for those assistants at the GM camps when I need somebody.
Yeah, let me know, because I think some of my kids would really like that, and I think that would look good as
love
far
that.
as, something that you can even put on for your college transcript or something is just that's a form of volunteering, is going out there. So,
But we digress.
oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm good at digressing.
All the time
all I ever
we
do.
digress. All
Okay.
the time.
So I
So
fit right in here.
Yeah, back to Alamo City Game Con. So what are some of the games that people you can expect to see over there happening?
So on the role-playing side, there's a local group that does Savage Worlds. They have really showed
we know
up.
them quite well.
Yeah,
Researchers.
they're going to have some really fun stuff offered. Pathfinder Starfinder Society is getting on board right now, and I think they're going to have some really cool stuff.
Awesome.
There will be some Steve Jackson games. I think those will all be great. They're a little more vague to me, but I think we're going to have two different
Who's
people.
Who's running the Steve Jackson?
Don Van Dolen and Al Griego.
Al Griego.
Al, I still need to kind of close the loop with, but I like that. I mean, I think that's an important part of gaming that I want to see there. So, and then, there will be some D&D games, and I'm running a Castles and Crusade game for beginners, and I know there's no way I should do that. I know that. I before you even tell me, like, are you out of your mind? Everybody's told me that, but I kind of had to.
No, it's so great. We always made everybody, yeah.
What I did is, like, I stopped myself during the convention. I was like, I'm setting this time to play games and run games. Mm-hmm.
Put somebody else in charge, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm planning to do. And it's funny because...
And drink lots of water because you're going to be running around everywhere. Especially at that venue, because we actually ran at that venue before.
Well, I came up with this whole arc of adventures, and I was planning on running them year after year at OwlCon, because... that's another game con that I went to. My daughter and I went to that in 2019. We were going to go in 2020, and something changed, and we didn't make it, and we didn't realize that was going to be our last chance for a very long time. But we had a blast there. That was really fun. It was it just had a really good vibe. So for Alamo City, one of the things I'm really hoping is that we get. I mean, the bare minimum is you put out a bunch of games, and people enjoy playing. Because I mean, it's an extended game day, and at a bare minimum, that should be fun for gamers, right? Mm-hmm. But you want to kind of also have something where you develop some kind of a feel that's sort of unique. And there are a lot of different things that I would love to see happen. And honestly, I don't know how much of that will take place in year one. Year one, it's I've had to sort of say, I have this grand big idea of how everything should be, and I have all these really cool creative twists to put in. And it's like, those aren't going to happen in year one. Year one is going to be about making sure that everything that we intend to run actually takes place. Yeah. And there will be some twists that I think are fun. Like, we've got a group coming from Austin that does puzzled pints. So it's this group that, it's the kind of thing I would love, and I think a lot of people will relate to it. They show up at a bar. They get a big gathering. The leader comes to a bar. They hand people a sheaf of papers, and you figure out what the heck you're supposed to do with them. You're not even told what your goal is, and then you sit and figure it out as a group. And I'm like, that sounds like fun. I would love to see like an escape room. I think that's a natural. I've talked to every escape room in San Antonio. That's not going to happen this year. But right. We're also not. Oops, I shouldn't say what we're not doing. Yeah, but we're not doing a poker tournament either, because I think that would be an awesome thing to have at a game con. But I needed a local sponsor, and I have not gotten that. But we're going to do other cool things. So, yeah.
I think one of the things that always helped us, that was something that I wanted to do, was to make sure that people who signed up to run games also left it available to people who had never tried it before. Yeah. So, if you're going to have a session for people that know how to play, that's great, right? And you want your group there and they know how to play. But other people want to come and try it and learn how to play. So my brother is not a gamer. He's a jock. And he's a big lunkhead. No, he's not a lunkhead.
He's not going to be watching this anyway.
He's not watching because he's not a nerd. But he's like a big 6'4" guy and everything. And so finally we convince him to play like Dungeons and Dragons, right? So we thought it would be funny to make his character a gnome with, and the only weapon he had was a returning frying pan. That was it. Magical returning frying pan. The child breathed on the dice, put his jockness on the dice or something. He was rolling 20s and 20s. Just
this is fun. I get to kill stuff with a frying pan.
He had so much fun, right? And we ended up having so much fun because he was having so much fun, And he was just being goofy, and he ended up doing a goofy voice and everything. And that's just half the fun of it. Is just
it's surprising who ends up liking RPGs.
Oh yeah.
When you get them to play it, because people don't even. Well, what is an RPG? Mm-hmm. What do you do? Mm-hmm. Well, it's like pretend with rules.
Yeah, kind
Playing
of.
pretend with rules.
Pretty much it.
Yeah.
What miniatures groups have you talked to?
That's the fourth branch of gaming that I was going to mention. So, I mean, for me, the big things are RPGs and board games. But the other thing, like when you said, what is your go-to game? For playing, that's it. But anytime I go to a con, I always love hanging out in the miniatures room just because it looks cool, So groups that we've gone to, Blake Radetzky has been helping me from the get-go. He's big in Lone Star Historical Miniature Society. I actually met him at Millennium Con in Austin.
Okay, yep.
And it was a hilarious experience. So I went there to promote Alamo City Game Con. I'm going to be honest, they all know that, and I told them that. But I was having a good time. I don't play miniatures really, but I'm walking along and I see this really cool setup. It's this Egyptian-looking thing, and I was like, this looks really fun. Who's doing this? Oh, Coach over there. So I sit down and I start talking to Coach, and I think we talked for like 2.5 hours. He was in between game sessions, and I didn't realize that. And he can talk and I can talk. And but what was hilarious is we're sitting there talking, and he's asking me all about everything, and he's asking me why am I doing this game con and why he'd be a good interview, by the way. But as we're talking over and over, somebody would come in, and it was like they'd all come in and check in with him, and I was like, what are you, like the Pope of miniatures gaming? Like, where's your ring? They're coming in to kiss the ring and check in with you. And then I realized, every one of these guys is from San Antonio. How did that happen? Because I had no idea. Like, I'd been talking to him for a long time, and I didn't realize that he lived in San Antonio. And this was in the phase where I was like, well, I just decided to start doing things I love and seeing what I can do with them. And I said to him at some point, my one disappointment here, I mean, I think we'll get the Game Con up and going, and that's great. And the private tutoring, I'm starting to do that. That's cool. But I really regret that I'm not going to be able to do summer camps. Because when I'd lived in Austin, I'd run a game-based summer camp program, and it was cool. And I was like, and he said, well, why not? And I said, well, it's going to take, I don't even have the energy to find the venue. It's just not realistic. And he goes, I run summer camps at St. Mary's Hall we do miniatures battles. Would you have any interest in being there? I was like, yes. And so that's how I got in there. So
Nice.
He's helping with the Game Con. He got me in at St. Mary's. And that was pretty sweet. And then we had Sean Grubaugh, who does Zinvaded.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love that game.
Oh, no, it's totally fun.
That game's totally fun.
So they're there as a vendor, but Sean actually can't make the con anymore. And so, but I've seen so many people play that game and love it. Somebody needs to run it. He had volunteered to do demos. Like he had 20 of them signed up over the course of time. We'd only 20, but somebody needs to be running that. If you do.
Yeah, definitely.
Since you love it so much, you probably could run it.
I'm not great at running games. I have tolerance for children. I don't have tolerance for adults. I've had friends who were running RPGs
I was mostly joking.
ask me to be chill because I don't have patience with grown-ups. Yeah.
I think a lot of us don't have patience with grown-ups, but we all work it.
Thomas Watt says, I bet you can expect him to come to Alamo City to promote his con. It's Geek networking.
There we go.
That's right.
That's right.
It's all about the geek working.
That's right.
So yeah. No, I'm really excited about this. I can't wait to see how it kicks off.
Yeah, I mean, we've got great space, and I know, it's funny. I know a lot of people will be very happy if they just can get out and get into open gaming and just start flagging people down to play games they want to play.
Yeah.
That's great. But we will have a good selection of role-playing games, miniatures, board games going at any particular time. We somehow will not necessarily have a whole lot of card games going, which I do find that ironic, because every game store in town, it's like Magic Night, this, and I've had people say, "Oh, are you doing Pokemon there?" I'm like, "No, why don't you come and run that?"
It's hard. It's been hard for years to.
Yeah, we always struggled to get the card gamers to come out and run something. Yeah, because a lot of their time is spent at the game stores running those events, and a lot of them are paid to run those events. So to get them to come and volunteer their time to do something, it was a little harder to do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we'll have something going on the card side. may not be a whole lot. Maybe there will be. Maybe there will be some folks who, are on this right now and go, well, why don't I go run Magic there? Yes, you should.
Yes, you should.
Yes, you should. But that may be another thing for like next year. I mean, oh my gosh, we're 2 weeks from starting. I've already got pages of lessons learned from this year. And so when you said you start planning next year, I was like, oh yeah, we're.
So you said you're 2 weeks from starting. So tell everybody, like, when is this happening? All of that kind of stuff.
March 31st, noon, and we will go until Sunday at 10 p.m. 11 if you really want to be there that long. We have kind of the round of the place. So every meeting space at La Quinta in the medical center. We have one. So we're splitting the ballroom. So there's one huge room that will be miniatures and RPGs. One huge room that will almost all be open gaming, but we'll also schedule some tournaments in there. And then a smaller meeting room that's devoted to board games, and it's totally full. Like there will be tons and tons of board games, and there will be some overflow into the open gaming for that as well. And then one room that's the dealer's room. And we have the boardroom where we'll do something like puzzle fights and maybe some other kind of fun, off the beaten path activities.
Nice. So it goes every night until what time?
Officially till 11 p.m.
Unofficially.
Unofficially, we're going to lock the dealer's room, obviously, and we'll lock the board game room. But if you want to play games with friends, you can play all night long in open gaming.
Very nice.
That was another thing, like from going to game cons. So my buddy Kevin and I have gone to a ton of game cons. But it wasn't just always the two of us. We would sometimes have like up to 12 people in our group who would go to particular cons. And we had this one friend who, Chris, I hope you don't mind this, who was a total jock. And he was totally into games. And oh my gosh, he was like, he won't ever hear this. He was like a young puppy. Like he would go and he would be like, I'm playing games. It's like, what time did you go to bed last night? 3. I'm like, oh dang, I can't do that anymore. But if there are people who can and want to do that, as long as they're cool and.
Well, if you have the werewolf people out there, they will stay up all night long.
Yes,
all night long.
Yes, we will have that. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, we'll have werewolf and the clock tower game. So we'll have all that going. And that's another kind of fun thing. Like when it comes to traditions, sometimes traditions have to kind of bubble up. Yeah. But I do think that those kind of games being played late at night, I think that's a really fun thing.
Yeah, and that's totally a tradition.
Jen Sweet or Henri?
Jen wanted to be here. The weekend doesn't work for her, so she has gotten 2 other people to sign up to do it.
So I have a quick Gen Con story since you said Al Griego. So we are longtime friends with Al. Al used to do ChimeraCon with us and Game Expo with us. And
he used to produce the show.
He used to produce the show with us, and we're really good friends with his son Daniel as well. So Daniel is a werewolf gamer, right? So the werewolf gamers, if you don't know, you have to go around in a circle and you get cards and you have to figure out who the werewolf is before they kill all the townspeople. So it's kind of a whodunit game. So it goes long into the night, into the morning hours. So Gen Con is very expensive. Like the hotels are like $600 a night. Okay. So we get with Daniel and we're like, hey, Daniel, we all want to go to Gen Con. Let's go. And he's like, yeah, let's go. So we get there and they had a king bed in our room and that was it. And so we were like, okay, well, the 3 of us are sharing this bed. But luckily he would game all night and he would kind of sleep in the morning time. Yeah. And so we would sleep in the night when he was gaming. And so we got to share the bed. So yeah.
Just think, La Quinta, $109 a night. There's that.
That's so much better.
and it is funny. Most of the game cons that I would go to were local, and I would almost always get a hotel room because it was like, why not? I just wanted to be there.
Come on, tell everybody the real reason why. Because we've been to lots of game cons in San Antonio, and we know why you get a room. Because you take all your friends up there after hours and then you drink the booze that you brought so you don't have to pay the prices and then you game in your room. No.
That's a possibility, but I'm not sure that either my daughter or my wife will be staying up late for any of that. So,
right. Yeah.
Actually, these days I'm not sure I can either. Like I don't know how much of that I've got left.
I can't do that.
When we ran the con, we had to have a room there because you have to be on site should anything happen. So definitely when we were running it, we had to have the room there.
I'm there from Wednesday night through through
for sure.
Sunday night.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And it works 7 minutes away, so that's kind of handy because I only have Friday off from work. So that's I mean, I obviously have Saturday and Sunday as well.
Right. Well, when you work in education.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, the whole thing is like the price structure for the thing is like you got to pay for the meeting rooms, but then you've got to fill all these hotel rooms, and the hotel rooms are actually the biggest concern for me right now. In terms of
We
finances.
remember.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a bit of a concern, but it's all right. It's all right. It's gonna go well.
So awesome. Yes, it's going to go very well. So definitely check it out. It's coming up the 31st.
2 weeks from yesterday.
Yeah.
2
So
weeks.
it's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to be there. But thanks for hanging out with us. It was a lot of fun.
This is fun.
We got to do it again, and we got a game. But thanks for checking us out. I'm Vince.
I'm Colleen, and that's Andrew.
Geek at us, eh?